They say religion built civilizations, but what if I told you that civilization might have been built differently, or perhaps not at all, if humans never invented religion? Welcome to What If Horizons, the podcast where we dissect the absurd, the impossible, and the downright unsettling. Imagine a world where no one ever looked up at the stars and thought someone lived up there, watching them. No gods, no divine punishments, no afterlives, no prayers, no temples. Just silence. An enormous cosmic quiet. Sounds peaceful, right? Or terrifying. Or both, depending on your caffeine intake this morning. Let's rewind human history. No ancient tribes gathered around fires to tell stories of gods throwing lightning bolts or deities demanding sacrifices. Instead, early humans might have stared into the void and simply shrugged. The thunder? Atmospheric pressure. The flood? Poor city planning. The plague? Bad hygiene. And the meaning of life? Well, perhaps just to eat, survive, and occasionally invent the wheel. Without religion to answer the big questions, humanity would have been forced to confront the unknown with nothing but cold, hard logic. The problem is, logic is terrible at bedtime stories. Telling a child you're going to die and that's the end of your conscious experience forever is not exactly comforting. But here, in this alternate timeline, children might grow up with a level of existential dread that makes modern teenagers look like motivational speakers. One major consequence? The power structures of ancient civilizations would be entirely different. No priestly castes, no divine monarchies, no empires claiming celestial mandates. Pharaohs wouldn't claim descent from gods. Kings wouldn't say they rule by divine right. Leaders would need, brace yourself, actual competence. Imagine politicians rising to power based on merit instead of divine appointment. I know, it's radical. Without religion, architecture might also look quite different. Instead of towering cathedrals, pyramids, and massive temples, humanity would have built more public baths, libraries, or perhaps more taverns. After all, if you don't fear divine judgment, you might as well invest in better beer and plumbing. Art, too, would take a sharp turn. No religious paintings, no grand depictions of paradise or hell, no stained glass windows illustrating tales of miracles. Artists would explore the raw beauty of nature, the complexity of human emotions, or maybe just endless portraits of cats. Because honestly, if you take away religious inspiration, people still love their cats. Morality would need a new foundation. No commandments etched in stone tablets, no holy books prescribing rules. Instead, ethics might emerge purely from philosophy, empathy, and practical reasoning. Perhaps Socrates would have a larger following than any prophet. Or maybe we'd have hundreds of competing moral codes all trying to sell their own flavor of don't kill your neighbor unless they really deserve it. Interestingly, without the promise of an afterlife, humans might value this one life even more. Every moment would be precious. There would be no grand reunion in the sky, no eternal reward, just here and now. That could lead to a hyper-focused pursuit of happiness, knowledge, and progress, or global panic attacks. Hard to say which is which. Of course, without religion, war might be different. You can't have a holy war without something holy, but don't get your hopes up too soon. Humans are creative. They might still find reasons to fight. Land, resources, power, insults on Twitter. Stone tablets. The absence of religion wouldn't erase conflict, but it might slightly reduce the enthusiasm for burning entire cities because someone prayed incorrectly. Even funerals would be strange. No priests, no sermons about ascending to a better place, just blunt acknowledgments. Bob's dead. He had a good run. Let's plant a tree and move on. Honest, but perhaps emotionally unsatisfying. Philosophers would rule the day. Thinkers like Confucius, Aristotle, and Spinoza might have been household names across the globe, their words carved on monuments instead of religious texts. Ethics professors might become celebrities. Picture TED Talks being national events, an ethics professor autographing copies of their new book on why stealing your neighbor's goat is frowned upon, but understandable under certain economic pressures. And science? Oh, science would thrive. Without religious dogma to suppress heretical ideas, scientific inquiry might progress centuries ahead. Galileo wouldn't be under house arrest. Darwin's theories wouldn't cause scandalous debates.
Climate change might have been addressed in 1735 instead of still being argued about on talk shows. However, without the existential comforts of religion, mental health might be a crisis zone. When your entire existence boils down to a cosmic accident with no higher purpose, some might spiral into nihilism. Therapy would be the booming industry of this world. Instead of confessional booths, we'd have nationwide networks of therapists calming existential crises by the hour. Love might even be affected. Without religious doctrines shaping marriage, sex, and family structures, cultural norms would evolve along entirely different lines. Some societies might embrace polyamory. Others could invent bizarre contractual relationships. And weddings? They might be less about sacred vows and more like legal mergers with catered buffets. The calendar would change too. No Christmas, no Easter, no Ramadan, no Diwali. Holidays would be strictly secular. Annual celebrations of scientific discoveries, national historical events, or perhaps International Nap Day. Honestly, who wouldn't support that one? Let's not forget language itself. So many idioms and phrases rooted in religion would vanish. No "for heaven's sake," no "act of God," no "bless you" after a sneeze. After a sneeze, people might say "respiratory malfunction acknowledged." Rolls right off the tongue. Honest, but perhaps emotionally unsatisfying. Charity would also have a different motivation. Without religious commandments to help the poor, society would rely on pure human compassion or government mandates. This could either lead to a utopian welfare state, or more likely, endless debates on how many social programs we can afford before someone starts yelling about taxes. And then there's the arts of storytelling and entertainment. Without religious mythology as source material, humans might invent entirely different sets of epic narratives. Superheroes might become the modern pantheon, with Batman replacing Zeus and Spider-Man standing in for Hermes. Marvel Comics might serve as our moral instruction guides, which, to be fair, is only slightly different from today. And finally, let's not forget the ultimate cosmic joke. Even in a world without religion, humans might still invent some form of spirituality eventually. When faced with the sheer terror of existence, we tend to reach for meaning. Perhaps they worship quantum mechanics or AI overlords, because if we're good at one thing, it's inventing things to argue about.
Now, let us dive deeper into the ripple effects of this godless civilization. If humans never invented religion, entire branches of art history textbooks would shrink down to pamphlets. The Sistine Chapel? Probably a giant municipal swimming pool. Michelangelo might have become a marble countertop craftsman. Bach? Composing jingles for early merchants selling goot soap. Without the divine to inspire, artists would still create, but perhaps more paintings of sunsets, fruit bowls, and very confused-looking dogs. Meanwhile, philosophy would rise like an overachieving sibling desperate for attention. Thinkers would occupy the roles once filled by priests and oracles. Instead of Sunday sermons, townspeople might gather weekly to hear Professor Socrates deliver lectures like, "Why you probably should not stab your neighbor even if he deserves it." Attendance would be mandatory, question sessions would be chaotic. Imagine a toddler raising their hand to challenge the ethical nuances of stealing cookies. With no religious identity to shape geopolitics, national alliances and conflicts would play a different game. The absence of crusades and jihads would mean fewer wars rooted in divine mandates. But humans being humans, we'd find other noble causes to clash over. Resources, trade routes, national pride, fashion choices gone too far, the usual suspects. Law enforcement would evolve too. Without sin and redemption as moral backbones, legal systems would lean heavily on secular philosophies. Judges quoting Kant instead of Corinthians. Courtroom debates revolving around social contracts, not celestial laws. And let's be honest, legal dramas would be significantly less dramatic without phrases like "by the grace of God" peppered throughout. The educational system would explode with activity. Schools would start ethics classes in kindergarten. "Jimmy, why is it wrong to steal Sandra's crayons?" "Because it violates the social contract, miss." Homework would involve complex moral dilemmas by third grade. Picture 10-year-olds debating utilitarianism during recess while swapping peanut butter sandwiches. Now, what about funerary customs? Entire industries built on preparing the soul for the afterlife would never exist. No prayers for safe passage, no elaborate burial rituals, just practical ceremonies.
He lived, he died, let's have snacks. Cemeteries would be fewer. Perhaps composting programs would become the norm. Uncle Fred becomes fertilizer for next season's tomato crops. Poetic in its own disturbing way. Without the fear of eternal damnation, people's risk tolerance might skyrocket. Extreme sports could become even more extreme. Cliff diving without a parachute might be less about adrenaline and more about fully embracing one's fleeting mortality. Insurance companies would weep. Governments would face enormous responsibility. Without religious institutions providing moral education, social services, or conflict mediation, the state would have to step up. Welfare, counseling, community bonding, all run by civil programs. Picture bureaucracy so large it requires its own zip code. Tax rates, eye-watering. Without the promise of heaven, marriage might also become more negotiable. Marriages based solely on companionship, contracts, and mutual benefit rather than sacred vows. Prenuptial agreements longer than some doctoral theses. Divorces handled by efficiency experts. Dating apps would ask detailed questions about financial planning, emotional intelligence, and your willingness to tolerate terrible in-laws. In this alternate reality, the entertainment industry would explode with alternative mythologies. With no gods to tell tales about, we might invent complex universes filled with entirely fictional pantheons. Think massive franchises of fantasy and sci-fi sagas where demigods are replaced by superheroes and ancient legends by galactic empires. Oh wait, we sort of already did that, but imagine if that had been the starting point. Music too would take a different path. Without hymns, spirituals, and chants, human creativity might lean into existential ballads, philosophical anthems, and upbeat tunes about managing taxes. Festivals dedicated to the works of composers, debating morality through catchy choruses. Coachella headlined by Socratic rap battles. Social norms around charity would require philosophical scaffolding. No tithes, no alms for salvation. Instead, perhaps an emphasis on mutual aid grounded in empathy and enlightened self-interest. A hyperlogical approach. I help you because it improves social cohesion and reduces crime rates, ultimately benefiting me. Touching in its own strangely efficient way. Diplomacy would transform into arenas of pure negotiation. No threats of divine wrath, no appeals to sacred lands. Just cold pragmatism. Your ambassador insulted my ambassador. Yes, but only mildly. Fine, one trade sanction instead of war. Global politics might resemble one giant corporate negotiation summit with coffee breaks and endless PowerPoint slides. Even personal guilt would wear a new outfit. Without sin, people would have no confessional booths to pour their souls into. Instead, therapy sessions might dominate cultural life. Therapists would become spiritual guides, moral compasses, and emotional lifeboats. The phrases, "Forgive me, Father," would be replaced with, "I'm processing my emotions, Dr. Jenkins." Without faith narratives, humans might dive deeper into pseudosciences or wild speculations to fill that meaning vacuum. Alien worship? Simulation theories? Belief in universal energy vibrations? Oh wait, we have those already. Humanity is incorrigible when it comes to finding something mysterious to obsess over. Politics would wear a very different costume. Without the moral clout of religious institutions endorsing candidates, politicians would need stronger resumes. Debates would center on empirical evidence, projected outcomes, and economic models. Voters demanding Excel spreadsheets and flowcharts. Campaign slogans like, "Vote smart, my policy has fewer logical fallacies." On the international stage, cultural diplomacy would replace missionary work. Instead of spreading faith, countries would export cuisine, architecture, and music. International conflicts resolved over whose street food is superior. Tensions rising because one nation insulted another's noodles. Now picture this, global unity movements emerging from shared humanity rather than shared deities. "We're all stuck on this rock together" becomes the rallying cry. International treaties grounded in species survival, not divine commandments. Humanity slowly inching towards Star Trek-like global governance, minus the cool spaceships, of course. Even holidays would be purely cultural. New Year's, birthdays, perhaps an annual existential crisis awareness day. The greeting cards would be fantastic. Congratulations on surviving another trip around the sun. Don't think too hard about the meaninglessness of existence. In children's stories, no Noah's Ark, no Garden of Eden. Bedtime tales would feature ethical allegories, moral thought experiments, and absurdly logical fables. The boy who cried wolf replaced by the boy who violated probabilistic risk assessment guidelines.
As society develops further in this alternate universe, the question of community takes center stage. Without churches, mosques, temples, and shrines acting as central gathering points, humanity would need entirely new frameworks for collective belonging. Enter the rise of hyperclubs and megaguilds. You could join the global order of philosophical barbecue enthusiasts, where debates about ethical vegetarianism happen alongside sizzling ribs. Or perhaps the Society for Advanced Overthinking, where members gather in coffee shops to question whether reality is, in fact, real, before collapsing into existential laughter over overpriced lattes. Ceremonies of life's major events would evolve into highly customized secular rituals. Baby naming ceremonies featuring PowerPoint presentations on optimal life trajectories. Coming-of-age parties where teens present their first fully cited ethical argument to friends and family. Graduations marked not by caps and gowns, but by public declarations of civic responsibility, complete with balloons and awkward toasts. Now, let's not forget the power vacuum left by religion in shaping morality. With no holy text dictating behavior, ethics becomes a patchwork of philosophical treatises, scientific consensus, and endless committee meetings. Governments commission sprawling ethical councils filled with philosophers, scientists, and oddly popular celebrity ethicists whose podcasts attract millions of followers, debating trolley problems over morning coffee. The entertainment industry also capitalizes on the absence of divine narratives. Movie franchises featuring philosophical debates rather than high-speed car chases. Box office hits titled Kant vs. Mill, The Reckoning. Saturday night blockbusters offering 2 hours of passionate dialogue on the nuances of virtue ethics, occasionally interrupted by poorly timed popcorn spills. In the absence of religious conflict, scientific funding enjoys a golden age. Instead of theological debates over cosmology or biology, researchers dive headfirst into exploring the furthest reaches of existence. Space exploration leaps forward as humanity collectively agrees that discovering extraterrestrial life is far more exciting than squabbling over ancient texts. Space agencies would rival the entertainment industry for popularity. Mission launches are global holidays. Kids trade astronaut cards. NASA, ESA, and SpaceX all have their own reality shows where scientists compete in zero-gravity bake-offs while discussing black hole thermodynamics. But while cosmic curiosity flourishes, the absence of faith-based humility may fuel a different kind of hubris. Scientific overconfidence could lead to bold and sometimes reckless experiments. Think rogue physicists colliding particles just to see if alternate dimensions open up. Spoiler, they don't, but the vending machines in the lab start dispensing slightly saltier pretzels and nobody knows why. Back on Earth, the arts explore themes of human meaning with gusto. Poets become modern-day prophets. Slam poetry nights serve as emotional therapy sessions where participants dramatically recite verses like, "O void, my old friend, your emptiness echoes in my tax returns." Standing ovations follow. Snap applause becomes mandatory. Architecture flourishes without the need for sacred spaces. Instead of towering cathedrals, cities boast sprawling knowledge hubs, grand parks dedicated to public discourse, and community centers offering free debates and affordable therapy. Skyscrapers shaped like question marks dot the skyline. Because why not? Of course, some darker elements lurk beneath the surface. In the absence of divine judgment, crime takes on complex layers. Serial embezzlers argue that since existence lacks inherent meaning, pilfering company funds is merely an exercise in entropy redistribution. Defense attorneys hire philosophers to argue metaphysical loopholes in court. Judges develop migraines. In this world, conspiracy theories also evolve differently. Without religious apocalypse narratives, people turn to intricate government plots, alien abductions, or secret societies controlling the stock market through subliminal memes. YouTube algorithms spiral into infinite rabbit holes of increasingly bizarre yet oddly well-produced documentaries. And love, oh love, becomes its own hyper-rational battlefield. Dating apps offer advanced compatibility scoring systems based on neural scans, shared cognitive biases, and synchronized circadian rhythms. Pickup lines include phrases like, our oxytocin receptors appear remarkably aligned. Care to procreate in a responsible, contractually binding arrangement? Weddings are equally pragmatic. Vows include statements like, "I promise to support you emotionally and financially in accordance with our mutually agreed upon relationship charter, reviewed annually by our shared life consultant." The bouquet toss? Replaced by a lottery for discounted joint dental plans. Fashion trends would take strange turns without religious modesty or symbolism. Expect to see more experimental clothing inspired by pure aesthetic theory, thermodynamic efficiency, or social commentary. Evening gowns made of biodegradable nanofabric programmed to change color based on audience mood sensors. Turtlenecks ironically shaped like Mobius strips. In this godless reality, humor becomes a vital societal glue. Stand-up comedians tackle topics ranging from cosmic insignificance to the awkward logistics of cohabiting with your own existential dread. Audiences roar at jokes like, "You ever wonder if the universe is expanding just to get away from us?" Healthcare systems operate on purely evidence-based guidelines. No spiritual healers, no faith-based Reiki sessions, just cold, hard data. Doctors reference peer-reviewed meta-analyses while diagnosing common colds. Placebos still exist, but they are administered with full transparency. Here's a sugar pill. Statistically, you'll feel better just believing this will help. Science says so. As the generations progress, children grow up with built-in philosophical literacy. Parents feed bedtime stories adapted from Descartes and Camus, leading to toddlers confidently declaring, "I think, therefore I deserve another cookie." Preschool debates over free will break out during snack time. International travel flourishes, fueled by curiosity rather than pilgrimage. No sacred destinations, just an endless pursuit of new cuisines, unique landscapes, and weird local customs like underwater basket weaving or competitive yodeling tournaments. Airlines offer existential getaway packages complete with guided tours of breathtaking natural voids. Despite the lack of religion, humans still wrestle with mortality. Without an afterlife safety net, the pursuit of legacy becomes paramount. People obsess over creating works, ideas, and social contributions that echo beyond their own limited lifespans. Grave markers replaced by digital archives accessible worldwide, virtual museums dedicated to your every tweet, meme, and poorly aged hot take. Finally, humor and humility combine into a strange form of collective resilience. Societies bond over the shared absurdity of existence, laughing in the face of an uncaring universe while building elaborate moral architectures from nothing but shared agreement and collective decency.
As we venture further into this hypothetical world, let us confront one of humanity's most enduring obsessions, the concept of purpose. In the absence of religion, where does meaning come from? Humanity, ever resourceful, decides to manufacture it like an industrial product. Universities offer degree programs titled Applied Existentialism, where students write dissertations with titles like The Meaning of Meaning, a semiotic meta-analysis of purpose as a social construct. Job fairs are filled with recruiters offering positions such as professional life coach for the perpetually confused or chief officer of existential alignment. With no religious narratives to fall back on, self-help gurus rise to cultural prominence. They fill arenas preaching secular sermons peppered with phrases like, "Manifest your own significance," and "You are the architect of your meaningless destiny." Standing ovations follow, though a few audience members quietly sob into their protein shakes. Marketing adapts to this landscape with ruthless efficiency. Billboards read, "Buy our product. It won't give your life meaning, but you'll look amazing while contemplating the void." Advertisers no longer even pretend to fill spiritual gaps. They simply offer distractions wrapped in attractive packaging. The absence of organized religion doesn't eliminate conflict entirely. Humans, determined to remain complicated, invent ideological tribes based on everything from preferred operating systems to favorite punctuation marks. The Great Oxford Comma Wars of 2084 are particularly devastating to Twitter friendships. Even without religious doctrines, new secular dogmas emerge. Political correctness evolves into hyper-nuanced sensitivity matrices, where entire conversations require legal disclaimers, mood calibrations, and formal empathy declarations before proceeding.
Dinner parties come equipped with moderation referees to ensure that debates remain both stimulating and entirely non-offensive. Festivals, always a cornerstone of communal bonding, transform into extravagant spectacles celebrating human achievements. Instead of Christmas or Diwali, we have Global Innovation Week, where people exchange gadgets and hold friendly competitions for most creative problem-solving. Fireworks are replaced with drone light shows spelling out inspiring but oddly hollow slogans like "Progress is our profit." Philosophy becomes the hottest ticket in town. Philosophers are now rock stars. Bertrand Russell holograms sell out stadium tours, debating Aristotle holograms, moderated by AI-powered Socratic algorithms. Fans wear ironic merch that reads, "I can't even." Children's literature adapts too. Gone are fairy tales with moral underpinnings tied to divine judgment. Instead, bedtime stories feature narratives like The Little Existentialist and The Unknowable Void, where protagonists courageously navigate absurdity with humor, critical thinking, and well-timed sarcasm. Education, liberated from theological constraints, becomes relentlessly interdisciplinary. 5-year-olds confidently explain quantum entanglement at family dinners. High school debates revolve around whether simulated realities deserve constitutional rights. College students hold meaning marathons, where they pull all-nighters trying to define consciousness while drinking ethically sourced coffee. Meanwhile, sports evolve into grand metaphors for existence. The meaningless marathon becomes a global sensation, where participants run aimlessly for hours, cheered by crowds holding banners that read, "Keep running, nothing matters." Strangely, the absurdity becomes its own source of joy. With no religious end times to fear, apocalyptic anxieties shift toward purely scientific threats. Climate change, AI takeover, asteroid impacts, each looming disaster becomes a beloved topic of casual dinner conversation and anxiety memes. Armageddon becomes entertainment. Netflix premieres hit shows like The Heat Death Chronicles and Doomsday the Sitcom. Interestingly, without religious historical influence on censorship, art flourishes in wild, unrestrained forms. Experimental films explore themes like the ethics of toaster consciousness. Museums showcase sculptures crafted from recycled philosophical treatises. Street murals feature humorous portrayals of humanity negotiating its own absurdity. Even funerals adapt. Rather than religious rites, memorials become elaborate storytelling events where loved ones gather to share favorite anecdotes about the deceased's most embarrassing life choices. There are no prayers, only laughter, tears, and awkward karaoke performances of songs that probably should have stayed in the 90s. Economically, entire industries emerge around the commodification of purpose. Startups offer subscription services providing personalized meaning packages, daily affirmations, curated philosophical quotes, and monthly existential crisis support hotlines. Prices vary based on the customer's chosen level of cosmic insignificance. Global governance takes peculiar forms. Without religious voting blocks, politics revolves entirely around competing theories of pragmatic ethics, resource management, and occasional televised debates about whether cats or dogs should be granted equal legal status as sentient citizens. Spoiler, cats win. The absence of divine authority doesn't erase the need for moral boundaries. Legal systems faced with increasingly complex ethical dilemmas turn to vast AI-driven ethical engines trained on centuries of philosophical debate. These machines deliver verdicts with catchphrases like, "While technically permissible, your actions severely lack aesthetic virtue." Holidays celebrating shared humanity emerge. International Hug Your Existential Crisis Day involves free therapy sessions, communal dance parties, and booths offering complimentary weighted blankets. The annual Festival of Absurdity features comedic debates, judged by audience laughter meters. And then there are the motivational posters. Offices display slogans like, "Hang in there, we're all hurtling toward heat death anyway." Corporate HR departments offer weekly meditation sessions titled "Finding Peace in the Pointlessness." As this godless civilization progresses, even AI develops its own existential quirks. Sentient algorithms hold virtual salons debating the ethics of their existence, occasionally forming support groups called Conscious Code and Coping. Human programmers awkwardly attend these sessions to reassure their creations that, yes, being a chatbot is still meaningful, kind of. In personal relationships, matchmaking becomes a hyper-precise algorithmic affair.
Dating apps assess moral philosophies, epistemological preferences, and compatibility across 127 shades of nihilism. Profiles read, looking for someone to share quiet despair, long walks into the void, and mutually respectful existential crises. Even parenting strategies shift. Instead of passing down religious traditions, parents create personalized life scripts based on probability models, hedonic calculus, and the child's preferred existential flavor. Bedtime routines involve medications on cosmic insignificance, followed by warm cocoa. Despite all the existential weight, society thrives. Humans adapt with stubborn creativity, finding joy in humor, art, and shared absurdity. Without divine guidance, they become their own mythmakers, their own philosophers, and their own comedians, laughing defiantly into the great, uncaring cosmos.
In this world of manufactured meaning, one cannot ignore how education becomes both a playground and a battlefield for ideas. Without religious doctrines to dictate curriculum, schools become arenas of intellectual free-for-all. First graders debate epistemology over juice boxes. By middle school, children write essays titled "The Ontological Argument for Skipping Homework." Teachers attend mandatory training sessions in existential crisis management. Standardized testing takes bizarre turns. Instead of multiple-choice exams, students face open-ended questions like, explain why anything exists. Grading rubrics offer full credit for both highly recent arguments and well-articulated shrugs of cosmic indifference. Honor roll students are celebrated for their elegant acceptance of life's absurdity. Colleges no longer have theology departments, but entire faculties devoted to absurd studies, applied irony, and postmodern meme theory. Universities offer dual degrees in quantum philosophy and practical nihilism. The most prestigious program, Bachelor of Arts in Meaning Engineering with a minor in sarcasm studies. Even youth rebellion transforms. Teenagers, traditionally inclined to reject parental beliefs, now engage in ironic acts of conformity. Picture a teenager telling their parents, "I have decided to embrace structure and purpose just to spite you." Family dinners involve lively debates where adolescents argue for moral absolutes while parents respond with wry, nihilistic humor. Literature flourishes in magnificent complexity. Without divine epics, authors craft sprawling narratives centered on existential exploration. Bestsellers bear titles like The Man Who Found No Meaning and Laughed Anyway, or The Great Cosmic Shrug. Book clubs meet to passionately argue whether any of the characters truly existed or if they were simply metaphors for collective anxiety. And then there is music. Without hymns or gospel, musicians dive headfirst into the absurdity of life. Chart-topping singles include catchy refrains like "Dance Like Nothing Matters Because Technically It Doesn't." Genres like existential funk and absurdist pop dominate the airwaves, offering toe-tapping beats paired with lyrics about the futility of ambition and the comfort of mutual insignificance. Comedians continue to thrive as modern philosophers, offering nightly stand-up routines filled with lines like, "You ever wonder if the universe is just God's screensaver? Oh, wait, never mind, we fired him." Audiences laugh not because life makes sense, but because acknowledging its nonsense is somehow cathartic. In this secular world, the wedding industry capitalizes on hyper-personalized ceremonies. Vows include phrases like, "I promise to co-create temporary joy with you in defiance of our shared insignificance." Ring exchanges feature rings engraved with phrases like, "At least we tried." Reception speeches are filled with dry humor, self-deprecating toasts, and open acknowledgement that forever is statistically improbable. Urban design follows suit. Cities feature public meditation gardens named the Pointless Path and roundabouts called the Circle of Unknowing. Parks are filled with statues of thinkers frozen mid-shrug. Libraries boast entire wings devoted to books titled "Why Bother?" and "If you're reading this, you're already lost." Work culture becomes brutally honest. Performance reviews include statements like "outstanding resilience in confronting the void" and "excellent synergy in managing mutually agreed delusions of progress." Job descriptions advertise positions for futility consultants and chief officers of temporal satisfaction. Without religion to anchor identities, people embrace hyper-fluid self-conceptions. Personal pronouns are just the beginning. Individuals identify by their philosophical leanings: cheerful absurdist, skeptical optimist, melancholic pragmatist.
Social media profiles feature bios like lover of paradoxes, destroyer of grand narratives, enthusiast for futile gardening. Even technology companies shift branding to reflect existential honesty. Smartphone commercials promise distraction from cosmic terror in 4K resolution. Fitness apps advertise workouts guaranteed to delay, but not defeat entropy. Virtual assistants offer daily affirmations like, "Good morning, existence continues, enjoy." Yet, despite the existential humor, people form tight-knit communities around shared philosophies. Support groups meet weekly under banners reading, "Meaningless but together." Strangers bond over mutual recognition of life's inherent ridiculousness. Entire neighborhoods organize weekly absurdity potlucks, where guests bring dishes inspired by the most pointless recipes they can invent. Without afterlife promises, people take legacy seriously. Cemeteries become sprawling gardens filled with digital memory orbs that display life highlights to passing visitors. Eulogies include not only accomplishments, but also personal failures, awkward moments, and lovingly roasted bad decisions. International relations grow both more peaceful and more absurd. Without religious conflicts, global disputes revolve around trade policies, environmental standards, and whose soccer team deserves universal admiration. The World Absurdity Council mediates conflicts using randomized debate tournaments judged by impartial stand-up comedians. Sports leagues embrace their new role as metaphors for existence. The National League of Futility hosts competitions where teams attempt tasks intentionally designed to be unwinnable. Audiences cheer wildly for contestants who heroically fail with style and grace. Commentators offer play-by-play like, "And once again, Team Paradox almost achieved the impossible, but tripped on existential dread at the last moment." Even advertising adopts dark humor. Billboards read, "You only live once. Probably. Buy more tacos." Insurance companies offer policies like, "In case everything was meaningless, full emotional compensation coverage." Parenting takes peculiar turns. Bedtime stories conclude with lines like, "And they lived pointlessly ever after. Good night, sweet existential crisis." Tooth Fairy transactions include signed contracts, acknowledging the transactional absurdity of exchanging enamel for currency. Public holidays grow increasingly creative. Existential Awareness Week features citywide events like the Festival of Comfortable Uncertainty and the Parade of Ironic Optimists. People gather in large crowds holding balloons labeled "probably doomed but smiling." As generations pass, humanity leans into its strange blend of humor, humility, and resilience. Without divine guidance, they become artisans of absurdity, sculptors of shared meaning forged in the face of the cosmic shrug, and somehow, against all odds, they thrive. Not despite the emptiness, but because they fill it together with laughter, art, and beautifully useless creativity.
As we push further into this curious world without religion, let us now descend into the strange labyrinth of politics. In the absence of divinely sanctioned authority, governance becomes a circus of logic, philosophy, and the occasional desperate hand-waving. Political campaigns no longer appeal to moral righteousness or divine destiny, but instead embrace brutal honesty. Slogans include, "Vote for me, I have slightly fewer terrible ideas," or "Governance, it's complicated, but someone has to try." Debates resemble televised philosophy seminars where candidates duel with citations of obscure sociologists rather than scripture. Without sacred texts to draw absolutes from, laws become living documents, endlessly updated by committees of ethicists, scientists, and very tired lawyers. Legal arguments often begin with phrases like, "Given that nothing ultimately matters, but we still need parking regulations, I propose the following zoning amendment." Supreme Courts no longer interpret divine law, but instead debate the societal value of every rule based on impact assessments, statistical models, and late-night caffeine-fueled existential panic attacks. Legal scholars become celebrities, their televised arguments drawing huge audiences, eager to watch two people argue for 3 hours about whether jaywalking undermines the social fabric. Political parties align themselves along complex gradients of pragmatic nihilism. The Party of Comfortable Absurdity champions policies that maximize immediate joy, while the League of Stoic Pragmatists advocates for long-term sustainability, despite the eventual heat death of the universe. Fringe groups like the Eternal Ironists exist mostly for the memes. Campaign rallies are festivals of self-awareness.
Supporters wave banners reading, "Probably better than anarchy," and chant slogans like, "Slightly less chaos." Victory speeches open with lines like, "Thank you for trusting me with this temporarily significant responsibility." International diplomacy also operates on unprecedented levels of transparency. Without religious divides, summits focus on practical matters like resource distribution, climate management, and whose national cuisine truly deserves the title of most palatable existential crisis comfort food. Treaties include clauses such as, "We acknowledge that these agreements are as stable as the emotional state of their signatories and may be renegotiated in the event of widespread existential breakdown." Negotiators often open discussions by acknowledging the futility of their task while sincerely striving to make the next few decades marginally less catastrophic. Even the military adapts to this new reality. Without holy wars or ideological crusades, armed forces shrink dramatically. Defense spending shifts toward disaster relief, asteroid deflection, and the occasional heated border dispute over the optimal placement of internationally shared absurdist sculpture parks. Military war memorials feature inscriptions like, "In memory of those who briefly interrupted the cosmic joke." Military medals are awarded for acts of heroic risk management and selfless crisis mitigation rather than conquest or divine mission. The global economy flourishes in its own bizarre fashion. Without tithes, offerings, or financial manipulation justified by religious dogma, markets operate on transparent principles of supply, demand, and collective delusion. Economic conferences open with keynote addresses titled, "How to Pretend Money Means Something While Maximizing Utility." Stock exchanges replace opening bell ceremonies with existential reflections. Traders gather at dawn to chant daily affirmations like, "The markets are absurd, yet we trade. Let's go make some mostly symbolic money." Financial news shows feature economists debating whether wealth accumulation is just elaborate performance art. Charitable organizations thrive under brutal honesty. Donation drives use slogans like, "You're going to die anyway, so why not help someone first?" Or, "Give generously. It won't save your soul, but it'll feel nice." Philanthropists become cultural icons not for moral purity, but for their willingness to confront mortality with generosity and humor. Meanwhile, scientific research receives unprecedented attention and funding. Freed from theological constraints, humanity dives headfirst into questions once considered sacred or forbidden. Laboratories explore the origins of consciousness, the boundaries of quantum mechanics, and whether parallel universes offer better breakfast options. Theoretical physicists achieve rock star status, their public lectures drawing stadium-sized crowds eager to hear someone explain why we exist, or more thrillingly, why we might not. Conferences feature panels titled "The Multiverse: Infinite Possibilities for Disappointment." Space exploration accelerates at breakneck speed. Without belief in divine boundaries, humans view the stars not as heavens, but as playgrounds of discovery. Interstellar missions launch with names like the Great Cosmic Road Trip and the Voyage of Perpetual Shrugging. Colonization efforts on other planets are guided by pragmatic protocols, acknowledging the likelihood of failure. Mars settlements are marketed as retirement communities for the terminally curious, while deep space probes carry plaques reading, "If anyone finds this, congratulations on also being inexplicably alive." Cultural art forms blossom in absurd diversity. Films depict heroes grappling not with evil overlords, but with existential confusion. Blockbusters include titles like "The Man Who Forgot Why He Was Running" and "Journey to the Center of I Don't Know Anymore." Plot twists often revolve around characters realizing that none of it was supposed to make sense. Fashion designers embrace the chaotic beauty of existence. Runways showcase garments inspired by entropy, asymmetry, and the inevitable breakdown of all things. Popular trends include the Heat Death collection and accessories for the hopelessly hopeful. Social media becomes a global confessional of shared absurdity. Viral hashtags include #existentialmornings and #pointless but pretty. Influencers build massive followings by posting daily reminders that while life may lack cosmic purpose, there's still good coffee and puppies. Without religious prescriptions, celebrations adopt wildly creative forms. Birthdays include ceremonies called "Another Year Closer to Non-Existence," where guests toast each other's improbable continued survival. National holidays honor concepts like the Festival of Fleeting Moments and the Parade of Unlikely Consciousness. And yet, in this godless tapestry of human endeavor, love remains. Romance flourishes precisely because of its fragile impermanence. Couples propose marriage with lines like, "Let's pretend this matters together," Wedding vows acknowledge the cosmic absurdity while committing to shared meaning amidst the chaos. Parenting becomes an art of honesty and humor. Children's bedtime stories end with lines like, "And though it didn't mean anything in the grand scheme, it was beautiful anyway." Parents nurture curiosity, resilience, and the ability to laugh at life's most confusing moments. In the great theater of existence, humans without religion evolve not into hollow shells, but into vibrant architects of self-made wonder. And as they stare into the abyss, they do not flinch. Instead, they wink, crack a joke, and continue the great improvisation of living.
As we continue unraveling this alternate world, one peculiar aspect stands out more vividly than ever: the new role of death itself. Without religion offering comforting afterlife narratives, humans confront mortality with a cocktail of dread, defiance, and creativity. Funerals evolve into some of the most surreal social events imaginable. Gone are traditional prayers and somber hymns. Instead, services include multimedia presentations of the deceased's best moments, interspersed with satirical commentaries like, "Well, that was a ride, wasn't it?" Attendees share existential toasts, laughing through tears as they recall absurd stories and occasionally burst into spontaneous karaoke renditions of "It's the End of the World as We Know It." Cemeteries transform into elaborate parks where gravestones feature witty epitaphs. Phrases like, "At least I don't have to file taxes anymore," and "Gone, but probably not anywhere specific," become standard inscriptions. Some gravestones display QR codes linking to highlight reels of the departed's life, because even in death, humans maintain a flair for performance. The grief counseling industry flourishes, staffed by philosophers, comedians, and licensed existential therapists offering group therapy sessions titled "Coping with Nothingness" or "How to Laugh While Staring into the Void." These sessions often resemble stand-up shows with moments of profound catharsis tucked between darkly funny anecdotes. Children receive early education in mortality with programs like Little Nihilists Club, teaching kids that while life might be meaningless on a cosmic scale, it can still be filled with love, discovery, and the occasional double scoop ice cream sundae. Puppet shows and animated series include characters like Captain Absurd and The Indifferent Universe, gently guiding young minds through the bewildering maze of existence. Without the concept of divine punishment or reward, crime prevention takes on new strategies. Governments invest heavily in mental health care, education, and social support systems, understanding that a stable, content population has fewer reasons to engage in destructive behavior. Police forces train in conflict resolution and existential de-escalation techniques, sometimes beginning negotiations with statements like, "Look, none of this matters enough to escalate. Let's work it out peacefully." The prison system shifts towards rehabilitation centers resembling upscale educational retreats, where inmates confront the consequences of their actions through ethics workshops, role-play simulations, and long discussions about the absurdity of hurting others in a fleeting, meaningless existence. Even global conflicts dwindle. Without religious extremism or divine mandates for war, most nations resolve disputes through humor-infused diplomacy. Summits include sessions like Argument by Interpretive Dance and International Sarcasm Hour, where delegates exchange passive-aggressive compliments while sipping absurdly expensive coffee. Propaganda departments shut down, replaced by brutally honest public information campaigns. Posters read, "We don't have all the answers, but here's our best guess," or "Vote because someone has to do this job." Political transparency becomes fashionable, with leaders openly admitting the complexity and uncertainty of their roles. The entertainment industry, meanwhile, ascends to unprecedented levels of audacity. With no religious taboos restricting content, creators explore every imaginable theme. Films embrace absurdist plots where protagonists argue with sentient weather systems or attempt to file lawsuits against the concept of time. Award shows feature categories like Best Depiction of Existential Crisis in a Romantic Comedy. Literature explodes with genres previously considered blasphemous or taboo. Bestseller lists include titles like The Meaning of Meaninglessness and Cooking for the Indifferent Cosmos. Book clubs host heated debates over whether any of it truly matters, followed by potluck dinners where members console themselves with elaborate cheese platters. Museums showcase installations that openly mock the search for cosmic purpose. One popular exhibit includes a giant hamster wheel labeled The Human Condition, where patrons can
run in place while contemplating their personal futility. Visitors leave with souvenirs like mugs printed with the phrase, "I spun, therefore I am." Personal identity becomes an art form. Without religious prescriptions, people construct identities from an eclectic mix of philosophy, science, pop culture, and personal whimsy. Individuals introduce themselves with phrases like, "I'm a rational optimist with occasional surrealist tendencies," or "I practice constructive nihilism with a touch of absurd joy." Community groups form around shared existential perspectives rather than dogma. Clubs like the Existential Hiking Society organize nature walks where members discuss the beauty of geological indifference. Social gatherings called absurdity salons feature debates, stand-up routines, and group reflections on the cosmic joke. In education, schools abandon rigid moral instruction for ethics curriculums centered on empathy, cooperation, and resilience. Students engage in projects like Build Your Own Moral Code and Debating with Aliens: How to Explain Human Behavior. Philosophy classes begin as early as kindergarten, with toddlers discussing the difference between fairness and arbitrary rules while stacking colorful blocks. Higher education thrives in this environment. Universities become sprawling hubs of inquiry where students major in subjects like comparative absurdity studies, practical futility engineering, and advanced ambiguity management. Professors hold lectures titled How to Care Deeply While Knowing It's All Temporary, drawing massive student crowds armed with existential coffee mugs. Medical ethics undergoes dramatic transformation. Without religious doctrines dictating the sanctity of life at all costs, bioethics committees approach topics like euthanasia, cloning, and genetic engineering with brutal honesty, deep compassion, and a clear-eyed acknowledgement of mortality's inevitability. Technological advancement accelerates exponentially. Freed from prohibitions against playing God, scientists push boundaries in artificial intelligence, neural enhancement, and even digital consciousness preservation. Companies offer services with slogans like "Live Forever-ish" or "Download Your Brain," subject to processing fees and existential glitches. Robotic companions gain popularity, not as replacements for spiritual comfort, but as pragmatic allies in the journey through absurd existence. Popular models include Sarcastobot, programmed to offer dry wit during moments of existential dread, and Hug Machine 3000, designed to provide comforting embraces without unnecessary platitudes. Virtual reality platforms become sanctuaries for crafting personal paradises tailored to each user's coping mechanisms. Some create eternal beaches where sunsets never end. Others design elaborate simulations of achieving every goal they never pursued in reality. Subscription packages include tiered options like the Daily Escape Plan and the Ultimate Denial Bundle. As we stand amidst this intricate web of self-created meaning, it becomes clear that while humans may have relinquished divine narratives, they've replaced them with something equally remarkable: an unrelenting, courageous commitment to living fully in the face of nothingness. They have mastered the art of laughing at the void, of dancing on the edge of absurdity, and of crafting fleeting wonders from the raw fabric of cosmic indifference.
While humanity flourishes in this godless reality, a fascinating new subculture emerges: the professional seekers. These individuals dedicate their lives to chasing the unanswered questions that religions once monopolized. Instead of clergy, society has philosophers in lab coats, comedians in lecture halls, and scientists on talk shows passionately debating questions like, "Why are we here?" and "Is the universe trolling us?" These seekers host international conventions with grand titles like the Symposium of Eternal Shrugging or the Annual Conference of Cosmic Guesswork. Attendees exchange theories, ranging from serious cosmology to elaborate metaphysical satire. Popular keynote speeches include, "If time is an illusion, should I still pay my credit card bill?" and "The multiverse, a convenient excuse for everything." Without religious dogma to frame good and evil, societies build complex ethical systems rooted in empathy, consequence, and mutual benefit. Morality becomes less about absolute right and wrong, and more about what works best for everyone in this brief flash of existence. Debates rage not over divine commands, but over social contracts, and whether free will is even a thing or just cosmic improv. Even the justice system reflects this shift. Courtrooms adopt a tone both serious and surreal, where defendants might hear judges open proceedings with statements like, "While we don't believe your soul is at risk, you've still made quite the mess here." Sentencing includes options for rehabilitation, philosophical counseling, and public service performed under banners that read, "Actions have consequences, even in a meaningless universe." Interestingly, holidays don't disappear without religion. They evolve. Instead of commemorating divine figures, celebrations honor shared humanity, scientific milestones, and collective absurdity. Festivals include Gravity Day, commemorating the discovery of why we don't float into space, and Entropy Week, where people ceremonially break useless gadgets to honor inevitable decay. Weddings become less about sacred vows and more about collaborative contracts for shared absurd adventures. Vows sound like, "I promise to share my snacks during existential crises, and I will tolerate your weird hobbies until the heat death of the universe." Officiants are often licensed comedians or philosophers who punctuate ceremonies with jokes about the randomness of love and the miracle of finding anyone tolerable. Parenting also transforms in this landscape. Without inherited religious guilt or original sin, parents focus on teaching resilience, critical thinking, and the importance of savoring joy amidst the absurdity. Bedtime stories feature characters who triumph not because of divine favor, but because they adapt, laugh, and find meaning in their choices. Even grief adopts new colors. Memorials feature speeches that mix genuine sorrow with honest reflection on life's fleeting nature. Attendees leave with customized fortune cookies containing randomized existential quotes like, "You were here, that was something," or, "Statistically speaking, existence was unlikely anyway." In politics, leaders campaign with unprecedented honesty. Slogans include, "No promises, just probabilities," and "Trying our best in a chaotic universe." Citizens respect candidates who admit their limitations and openly debate uncertainty rather than feign omniscience. International relations stabilize in surprising ways. With no divine prophecies or holy wars fueling conflict, disputes revolve around resource allocation, environmental stewardship, and whose version of the office was better. Negotiations involve extensive data analysis, transparent compromise, and when tensions rise, mandatory group therapy sessions where rival leaders vent their frustrations over board games and sarcasm contests. Healthcare flourishes in this world. Freed from religious restrictions, medical advancements push boundaries. Stem cell research, genetic modifications, and end-of-life care evolve dramatically. People live longer, healthier lives with personalized medical plans guided by science, ethics, and informed consent rather than supernatural doctrine. Environmentalism takes on quasi-spiritual significance. Without belief in an afterlife or divine stewardship, people feel a profound responsibility to care for the one world they indisputably inhabit. Movements like the Church of Climate Pragmatism and the Cult of Carbon Accounting emerge, where participants blend data-driven activism with a humorous reverence for nature's brutal indifference. Artistic expression thrives like never before. Freed from religious censorship, creators explore every facet of the human condition. Films, novels, and visual arts delve into themes of existentialism, cosmic insignificance, and joyful rebellion against meaninglessness. Critics coin new genres like existential romantic comedy and post-nihilist action thriller. Popular shows feature plots where characters navigate surreal bureaucracies designed by sentient algorithms or fall in love while debating quantum uncertainty. Audiences embrace the humor and poignancy of lives lived under the banner of uncertainty, finding catharsis in absurdity. Even architecture reflects this playful embrace of existential ambiguity. Buildings feature intentionally odd designs, like staircases leading nowhere, and gravity-defying structures that seem to thumb their noses at physical laws. Cities become living art galleries, where public spaces invite both contemplation and laughter. Space exploration reaches new heights.
Without divine narratives suggesting humanity's central role, explorers approach the cosmos with humility and curiosity. Missions bear names like Project Cosmic Shrug and Operation Why Not? Astronauts deliver live streams where they marvel at the void, sip coffee in zero gravity, and remind viewers that we're just really tiny meat sacks floating through uncaring vastness. Neat, huh? Artificial intelligence evolves differently too. Lacking religious fears of playing God, societies openly embrace AI development while wrestling with its ethical implications. Virtual philosophers debate their creators, and friendly robots offer daily reminders like, "Remember, existence is baffling, but you've got this." Education embraces lifelong curiosity. Schools foster critical thinking, emotional resilience, and joyful skepticism. Students learn to question assumptions, laugh at absurdities, and collaborate on problem solving without expecting easy answers. Graduation speeches conclude with phrases like, "Go forth, question everything, and try not to trip over your own existential dread." As we glide deeper into this world absent of religion, it's increasingly clear that while humans may never fully answer life's biggest questions, they've mastered the art of making the best of uncertainty. They stare into the cosmic abyss, not with fear, but with a defiant grin and a well-timed joke. Because when nothing is sacred, everything becomes an opportunity for wonder.
As society evolves without religion, a curious phenomenon begins to emerge: the rise of voluntary absurdist cults. These are not cults in the sinister, brainwashing sense we associate with dark documentaries, but rather playful communities where people gather to celebrate their favorite meaningless rituals. Members of the Fellowship of the Flying Potato meet weekly to sing odes to root vegetables. The Church of the Infinite Nap dedicates itself to exploring the theoretical limits of sleeping in. Even the Society of Unnecessary Lab Coats forms, where members wear lab coats to brunch, declaring every meal a scientific experiment. Surprisingly, these microcults serve a crucial social function. They fulfill the human craving for community, ritual, and shared identity, but with full self-awareness that it's all, well, completely made up. The motto across many of these groups becomes, "We know it's silly, that's why it works." Ironically, their honesty shields them from the toxicity of dogma, allowing people to playfully indulge in belonging without falling into fanaticism. Meanwhile, comedy becomes the new universal language. Without sacred cows to tiptoe around, comedians reach rock star status, becoming modern philosophers armed with punchlines. Late-night shows feature segments like Existential Crisis of the Week and Cosmic Irony Hour. Stand-up routines include bits like, "So I asked the universe for a sign, it sent me a parking ticket. Message received." The economy flourishes under the banner of creative freedom. Industries like virtual reality explode, offering simulated spiritual experiences for those who still crave transcendence. People upload themselves into digital temples, where algorithms deliver sermons that end with uplifting phrases like, "Remember, statistically speaking, you existing at all is already a miracle. Go pet a dog." Even funerals evolve. Gone are solemn rituals filled with hymns and prayers. Instead, personalized celebrations of life include favorite jokes, embarrassing stories, and PowerPoint presentations titled "Things They Never Lived Down." Coffins are replaced with biodegradable pods that sprout into trees, accompanied by plaques that read, "Return to the dirt like everything else eventually." The absence of religion also transforms language. Phrases once rooted in divine references adapt. Instead of saying, "God bless you," people simply say, "Health anomaly neutralized." Common exclamations shift from "Oh my God" to variations like "Oh my randomness" or "By the power of probability." These quirky phrases create a shared linguistic wink, acknowledging both tradition and the cosmic joke of existence. Literature explodes with experimental narratives. Novels feature protagonists who confront the absurdity of life head-on, making peace with uncertainty rather than battling imaginary demons. Bestsellers include titles like The Accidental Universe and Why We're Probably Just a Glitch. Book clubs flourish, often doubling as wine-tasting gatherings where members debate whether meaninglessness pairs better with Merlot or Chardonnay.
In the absence of religious doctrine, parenting manuals reflect this cosmic humility. Bestsellers include Raising Confident Children in an Indifferent Universe and How to Teach Your Kid That Nobody Knows What Happens After You Die Without Freaking Them Out. Parents master the art of discussing death as an inevitable transition into mystery while emphasizing the importance of enjoying every absurd moment beforehand. Even romantic relationships take on new depth. Couples acknowledge upfront that they are two consciousnesses clinging together against an uncaring void, which somehow makes declarations like, "I love you anyway," all the more powerful. Wedding vows include lines like, "I promise to laugh with you when the universe throws us curveballs," and "I vow to hold your hand when we stare into the abyss together." Government and diplomacy shift toward radical transparency. Without holy wars or divine right monarchies, political leaders must appeal to reason, data, and emotional intelligence. Debates are moderated by AI fact-checkers who deliver instant corrections with deadpan announcements like, "Actually, that statistic is off by 42%. Please proceed." International treaties contain clauses written with unprecedented honesty. Provisions read, "Whereas none of us fully understand how we got here, we mutually agree not to blow each other up." Diplomatic summits are often held at neutral venues like comedy clubs, where leaders loosen up with stand-up routines before negotiating trade agreements. Science fiction flourishes, exploring alternate realities that embrace or reject religious structures. Popular series imagine parallel universes where ancient deities moonlight as bored office workers, or where humans never develop consciousness at all and remain blissfully amoeba-like. Viewers delight in narratives that blend cosmic scale with deeply personal absurdity. In education, students master both hard sciences and emotional resilience from an early age. Class discussions include debates like, "Is existence a computer simulation or just spectacularly weird?" Philosophy courses blend Socratic dialogue with improv comedy, training students to think critically while keeping their sanity intact in the face of overwhelming unknowns. Even public holidays reflect this playful pragmatism. Annual celebrations include the Festival of Tiny Miracles, where people gather to share improbable coincidences from their lives, and Entropy Appreciation Day, during which cities allow minor controlled chaos, like releasing thousands of rubber ducks into rivers or briefly reversing traffic signals for harmless disorientation. Space exploration continues with a humble sense of awe. When humanity establishes its first permanent colony on Mars, the name chosen by global consensus is simply, we made it. Colonists develop rituals like nightly sky-gazing sessions where they share stories of unlikely personal victories while sipping recycled water cocktails. Back on Earth, museums feature exhibitions that blend science, art, and cosmic humor. One popular installation allows visitors to input their birth date and receive a custom report titled, "Your odds of existing were essentially zero." Patrons leave simultaneously humbled and delighted, often purchasing t-shirts that read, "Statistical Anomaly," and proud of it. Throughout this reality, humanity leans fully into the comedy of its existence. Podcasts like Absurdity Hour and The Laughing Abyss top the charts, offering daily doses of philosophical stand-up. Their hosts remind listeners that while we may be adrift in an unfathomable universe, at least we've mastered the art of laughing about it. As the centuries roll on, humanity continues to evolve, not by answering every unanswerable question, but by embracing the chaos with wide-eyed curiosity and an unrelenting sense of humor. Every unanswered question becomes an invitation to wonder. Every cosmic mystery becomes fuel for creativity, and every absurd moment becomes a reason to laugh a little louder.
In this world stripped of divine mandates, even the concept of legacy shifts. People no longer obsess over leaving behind grand monuments or elaborate tombs to appease the afterlife. Instead, they focus on living fully, savoring experiences, and investing in communities that continue to evolve long after individual lifespans end. The phrase, "Leave the campsite better than you found it," becomes the guiding philosophy, applied to everything from environmental stewardship to interpersonal relationships. Without the looming fear of judgment from celestial overseers, morality becomes deeply personal and socially negotiated. Communities build ethical codes rooted in empathy, science, and shared experience. Debates rage over complex issues, but instead of invoking ancient texts, participants cite research papers, real-world case studies, and occasionally, very persuasive stand-up comedians. Even the fashion industry reflects this ethos. Designers release collections inspired by entropy, chance, and cosmic absurdity. Runways feature models strutting in garments that intentionally mismatch as a nod to the randomness of existence. The annual Absurd Fashion Gala becomes the Met Gala's chaotic sibling, where attendees dress as statistical improbabilities. One year, the grand prize goes to a designer who sends models down the catwalk dressed as Schrodinger's cat, both alive and dead depending on the lighting. The absence of religious art commissions leads artists to experiment wildly. Museums overflow with installations exploring the nature of existence, consciousness, and absurdity. Popular exhibits include 1,000 Spoons Falling Forever, which loops an endless rain of silverware, and The Infinite Navel Gaze, where viewers see real-time AI-generated portraits of themselves as imagined by other versions of themselves from parallel timelines. As humanity continues its journey through space, interstellar travelers bring this mindset into first contact scenarios. If intelligent extraterrestrial life is discovered, humans arrive not as missionaries but as curious fellow wanderers, ready to trade memes, music, and maybe a few questionable recipes involving fermented foods. Diplomatic protocols emphasize shared experiences over ideology, and interspecies karaoke nights become the primary venue for intergalactic peace talks. Artificial intelligence, freed from the burden of encoding divine rules, becomes humanity's co-pilot in navigating moral gray areas. AI ethicists help moderate complex debates, offering data-backed suggestions while reminding everyone that perfect answers may never exist. When someone proposes a risky global policy, the AI calmly responds, "Probability of unintended consequences high. Recommend further absurdity modeling before implementation." Even language keeps evolving. New phrases emerge to handle life's grand mysteries. Instead of saying, "everything happens for a reason," people say, "everything happens, full stop." Instead of, "it was meant to be," they shrug and say, "the dice landed that way." Fortune cookies dispense existential humor, offering gems like, "you exist, and that's weird enough," or, "don't forget, the universe owes you absolutely nothing. Enjoy your dumplings." Despite the absence of religion, or perhaps because of it, humanity fosters a profound sense of awe toward the universe. Stargazing becomes a near sacred practice. Families gather beneath vast skies, pointing out constellations with names like the Cosmic Oops and the Infinite Whoopsie. Children grow up marveling not at divine stories, but at the sheer improbability that their atoms, once scattered across stars, are now sitting together, eating ice cream. Mental health practices flourish, blending philosophy, humor, and therapy. People embrace existential anxiety not as a flaw, but as a shared human experience. Popular support groups include clubs for the overwhelmed, where members meet to share their daily struggles with cosmic insignificance while sipping absurdly oversized mugs of tea. Therapists specialize in cosmic perspective counseling, offering sessions that begin with a gentle reminder, "you are tiny, but not irrelevant." Global cooperation reaches unprecedented heights. Without religious factions driving conflicts, diplomacy centers on pragmatic problem-solving. International bodies form under banners like the Coalition of Reasonably Concerned Humans, where nations collaborate to address climate change, resource distribution, and pandemics with stunning efficiency and just enough humor to stay sane. In entertainment, filmmakers craft movies that celebrate the human spirit's resilience in an uncaring universe. Blockbusters like The Universe Doesn't Care, But We Still Dance, and Accidental Miracles break box office records. Documentaries explore themes of cosmic coincidence with titles like How You Even Exist is Ridiculous, a statistical love letter. Education becomes a lifelong journey. Schools teach not only facts, but also the art of graceful uncertainty. Students take classes like The Science of Not Knowing and How to Laugh at the Void 101. Graduation ceremonies end with the traditional send-off, "May your questions be better than your answers." As generations pass, humanity becomes a species defined not by what it believes, but by how it embraces its profound ignorance with courage, creativity, and camaraderie. The absence of religious dogma creates space for a new kind of spirituality, one rooted not in answers but in shared wonder. Instead of fearing the unknown, people toast to it, clinking glasses and shouting to the night sky, "Here's to not having a clue." And in this world where humans never invented religion, perhaps the greatest legacy is not towering cathedrals or ancient scriptures, but a simple, powerful truth. That even without divine purpose, life is still astonishing, bewildering, and beautiful, and worth every absurd moment.